The crystalline walls of the Galactic Council chamber trembled as Ambassador Zephyr's voice cracked through the translator matrix. Her blue-scaled hands shook as she gripped the podium, her words echoing across the vast amphitheater where representatives from 47 civilizations sat in stunned silence. They said no. The simple statement hit the assembly like a plasma blast. Murmurs erupted from every corner of the chamber. The Velkari delegation chittered in their harmonic language, while the towering Gorvani slammed their massive fists against their crystalline desks, creating a thunderous percussion that made the smaller species flinch. High Chancellor Morvex, a being that looked like living starlight contained within a humanoid form, raised his luminous hand for silence. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of eons. Ambassador Zephyr, please clarify. Did the human delegation reject our offer of conditional surrender? Zephyr's throat sac inflated, a sign of extreme distress among her people. No, High Chancellor. They rejected our offer to let them surrender. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in the Council's 3,000-year history, a species had been offered the mercy of conditional surrender, and had refused it. Not because they couldn't understand the terms, not because of translation errors, but because they simply said no. This is unprecedented, whispered Councillor Thex, her insectoid features twitching with anxiety. Every species in the galaxy has accepted the Council's authority. Every species has recognized the futility of resistance against our combined might. Not the humans, Zephyr said, her voice barely above a whisper. They looked at our fleet of 10,000 vessels, our alliance of 47 civilizations, our weapons capable of cracking planets, and they laughed. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Laughed? High Chancellor Morvex leaned forward, his starlight form flickering with what could only be described as confusion. Ambassador Chen, their lead negotiator. She actually laughed. Then she said, and I quote, "You want to fight humanity? Get in line. We've been fighting ourselves for 10,000 years and we're still here. What makes you think 47 alien species can do what we couldn't do to ourselves?" The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages while their translators struggled to keep up. Some species had never encountered such audacity. Others recognized it as either supreme confidence or complete insanity. Through the din, one voice cut clear and cold. It belonged to General Krax of the Dominion fleet, his scarred carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. Then we destroy them. Completely. No negotiation. No mercy. We glass their worlds and scatter their atoms to the void. General, High Chancellor Morvex's voice carried a warning. The humans have only existed in space for barely 200 years. They have fewer than 50 star systems. How can such a primitive species pose any real threat to our alliance? General. Krax's mandibles clicked in what his species considered dark amusement. High Chancellor, with respect, you've never fought humans before. I have. The chamber fell silent again, all attention focused on the scarred military leader. 15 years ago, my battle group encountered a human exploration vessel in the Kepler Nebula. One ship, crew of 37. When we demanded they surrender and submit to Council authority, they responded by ramming our flagship with their cargo hold full of antimatter. The general's voice grew colder. They killed themselves to damage us. Not to win. They couldn't win. Just to hurt us. In all my campaigns across the galaxy, I've never encountered a species that would rather die fighting than live surrendering. But surely, interrupted Councillor Vex, her crystalline body ringing with nervous harmonics, they can be made to see reason? Economic sanctions, trade embargoes, isolation. Ambassador Zephyr pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. We tried that first. We cut off all trade, blocked all communications, isolated them completely. Their response was to accelerate their military development and begin aggressive expansion into unclaimed systems. She manipulated the display, showing red dots spreading outward from human space. In the 5 years since we implemented sanctions, they've established colonies in 12 new systems, built 6 new shipyards, and tripled the size of their fleet. How is that possible? Demanded Counselor Quinn, her ethereal form shimmering with disbelief. Cut off from galactic trade networks, they should have stagnated. They're resourceful, Zephyr said weakly. They strip mine asteroids. They harvest gas from giant planets. They build everything themselves, and somehow they do it faster than species with access to the entire galactic economy. High Chancellor Morvex studied the display with growing unease. What exactly did Ambassador Chen say when you presented our final terms? Zephyr swallowed hard, her throat sac deflating. She said, "We didn't crawl out of the primordial soup, survive ice ages, build civilizations, fight 2 world wars, reach for the stars, and spread across the galaxy just to bow down to a bunch of aliens who think they own the universe. If you want our submission, come and take it, but bring more ships, you're going to need them." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order through overwhelming force, and the simple reality that resistance was futile. Species joined willingly or were crushed quickly and efficiently, but humanity seemed to operate on different rules entirely. There's more, Zephyr added reluctantly. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the chamber focused on her. Ambassador Chen requested that I deliver a message to this assembly. She activated her personal datapad with trembling hands. She said, and I quote, "Tell your council that humanity has a saying. If you want peace, prepare for war." Well, we've been preparing for war since we figured out how to bang rocks together. The question isn't whether you can defeat us. The question is whether you can afford what it's going to cost. General Krax's laugh was like grinding metal. Finally, a worthy opponent. General, High Chancellor Morvex's voice carried a sharp warning. This is not a game. If we cannot bring humanity into the Council through negotiation, we face the prospect of our first major galactic war in over a millennium. Then perhaps, Krax replied, his battle-scarred form radiating confidence, it's time to remind the galaxy why the Council's authority goes unquestioned. But even as he spoke those words, the general couldn't shake the memory of that human ship in the Kepler Nebula. The way they'd looked at his massive battle group, not with fear but with calculation, as if they were already planning how to hurt him most before they died. And now, instead of one ship, there were thousands. High Chancellor Morvex called for recess, but as delegates filed out in worried clusters, one question echoed through every mind. How do you negotiate with a species that would rather die fighting than live surrendering? In the vast emptiness of space between Earth and the Council territories, human ships moved like shadows, their crews preparing for a war that their leaders had just declared inevitable. They didn't know if they could win, but they knew exactly how much they were willing to lose trying, and that, perhaps, was what made them most dangerous of all. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the tactical display in the war room of the UES Defiance, humanity's flagship, watching red dots multiply across the three-dimensional star map. Each dot represented a Council fleet moving toward human space, and there were far too many of them. "Report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. Commander Rodriguez, her tactical officer, stepped forward. His face was grim but determined. "Long-range sensors confirm 47 separate fleets converging on our outer colonies. Total vessel count." He paused, checking his datapad. "Estimated at 12,000 ships, Admiral." A low whistle came from Captain Morrison, the grizzled Marine commander who served as Chen's ground operations advisor. 12,000. And we've got what? 800 combat-ready vessels? 837, Chen corrected. But numbers have never been humanity's strong suit anyway. She manipulated the display, zooming in on specific sectors. "What's our intelligence on their force composition?" "Mixed bag," Rodriguez replied. "The Velkari favor swarm tactics, lots of small fast ships. The Gorvani prefer massive dreadnoughts with heavy armor. The Ethereals use energy-based weapons almost exclusively, while the Dominion relies on kinetic bombardment. Diverse opponents, with different strengths and weaknesses," Chen mused. "That could work for us." What about coordination between species? That's where it gets interesting, Rodriguez said, highlighting communication patterns on the display. They're using a central command structure, but there are inefficiencies, cultural differences, communication delays, competing tactical doctrines. Morrison grinned. So they're a committee trying to fight a war. Exactly. Chen smiled grimly. And we know how well committees work under pressure. She turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Park, patch me through to all fleet commanders. Priority 1 encryption. Within moments, the holographic forms of humanity's naval leadership appeared around the table. Admiral Zhang from the Outer Rim Defense Force, Admiral Okafor, commanding the Sol Defense Fleet, and Admiral Petrov from the Deep Space Strike Group. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen began, you've all seen the intelligence reports. The Council is coming with everything they have. This isn't a police action, it's an extermination campaign. So what's the plan? Admiral Zhang asked bluntly. We can't match them ship for ship, and our colonies are too spread out to defend effectively. We don't defend, Chen replied. We attack. The silence that followed was pregnant with possibility and terror. Explain, Admiral Petrov said quietly. Chen manipulated the display, showing human fleet positions and projected Council movements. The Council thinks like an empire, massive, centralized, dependent on supply lines and communication networks. They're bringing overwhelming force to crush us quickly and decisively. Which would work, Admiral Okafor pointed out, if we fought like an empire. But we don't. Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. We fight like humans, while they're moving. Their massive fleets to our colonies, we hit their supply lines, their command centers, their home systems. You're talking about attacking 47 different species across hundreds of systems, Zhang said slowly. Simultaneously. I'm talking about making this war so expensive that they'll reconsider whether humanity is worth the cost, Chen corrected. Every species in the Council joined because membership was profitable and safe. We're going to make it very unprofitable and very unsafe. Morrison was already grinning. Asymmetric warfare. Hit and run. Make every system they have a potential target. Exactly. They want to fight a traditional fleet engagement where their numerical superiority matters. Instead, we're going to fight 100 small wars simultaneously. Admiral Zhang leaned forward. What about our colonies? Our civilians? Chen's expression softened slightly. We evacuate who we can. Fight delaying actions where we can't. But Zhang, they were always going to bombard our colonies whether we fought or surrendered. At least this way, we make them pay for it. The truth hung heavy in the air. Everyone knew that negotiation had been humanity's last peaceful option. The Council had offered conditional surrender, with the clear implication that refusal meant extinction. So we're really doing this, Petrov said quietly. War against the entire galaxy. Not the entire galaxy, Chen corrected. War against the 47 species that think they get to dictate humanity's future. There are hundreds of other species out there who've never joined the Council, who've been waiting for someone to prove that the Council isn't invincible. She pulled up another display showing unexplored regions of the galaxy. Our intelligence suggests there are numerous non-Council species who might be sympathetic to our cause. Not necessarily as allies, but as interested observers who wouldn't mind seeing the Council taken down a few notches. You're gambling with the entire human race, as Zhang pointed out. No, Chen replied. The Council is gambling with the entire human race. They made the choice to demand our submission or extinction. We're just choosing how we want to respond. Lieutenant Park suddenly straightened at her station. Admiral, incoming priority transmission from Earth. It's President Martinez. The President's holographic form appeared at the table, her expression grave but resolute. Admiral Chen, the Global Defense Council has reached unanimous agreement. Operation Prometheus is authorized. A collective intake of breath went around the table. Operation Prometheus was humanity's most classified military project, something so secret that only a handful of people knew what it involved. Are you certain, Madam President? Chen asked. Once we open that particular box, there's no putting it back. Admiral, The Council has made their position clear. They view humanity as a threat to be eliminated, not a species to be negotiated with. If they want to see what humanity is truly capable of when our backs are against the wall. Martinez paused, her expression hardening. Then let's show them. After the president's transmission ended, the fleet commanders sat in stunned silence. They all knew about Prometheus in general terms, a series of black projects that had been developing since humanity's first contact with hostile alien species. But the specifics were compartmentalized to such a degree that only Chen and a few others knew the full scope. "Admiral," Petrov said carefully, "what exactly is Prometheus?" Chen stood and walked to the main display, her hands clasped behind her back. Prometheus is what happens when you give human scientists, engineers, and military strategists 200 years to prepare for a war against technologically superior opponents. She turned back to face them. Every species in the galaxy assumes that human technology is primitive because we've only been in space for 2 centuries. What they don't understand is that we've spent those 2 centuries preparing for exactly this scenario. The display shifted to show technical schematics that made the seasoned military officers lean forward in amazement. "My God," Zhang whispered. "How long have you been developing this?" "Since first contact," Chen replied. "Since the moment we realized we weren't alone in the universe and that not everything out there was friendly. Every human colony, every research station, every deep space outpost has been contributing to Prometheus." Morrison was studying the schematics with professional interest. "This is going to change everything." "That's the idea." Chen's expression was grim. "The Council thinks they're fighting primitive humans with conventional technology. They're about to discover what happens when you threaten a species that's been planning for total war since before they knew you existed." Admiral Okafor spoke. "Pai, what are our chances?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. "Honestly, I don't know. But I know this. When the dust settles, every species in the galaxy is going to understand why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars. We don't just fight to win. We fight like our entire species depends on it." "Because it does," Zhang said quietly. "Because it does," Chen agreed. As the fleet commanders signed off to return to their ships and prepare for humanity's first galactic war, Chen remained alone in the war room, staring at the tactical display. 12,000 enemy ships converging on human space, 837 human ships preparing to meet them. The odds were impossible, the stakes were absolute. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Admiral Sarah Chen was already smiling. After, all impossible odds were where humanity did its best work. 3 days later, the galaxy learned what humanity meant by asymmetric warfare. High Chancellor Morvex was reviewing fleet positions in his private chambers when the emergency alerts began cascading across his communication array. The first report came from the Velkari home system. "High Chancellor." The voice belonged to Fleet Admiral Zex, his harmonic tones distorted by panic. "We're under attack. Human ships appeared out of nowhere. They're hitting our orbital shipyards." Before Morvex could respond, another transmission burst through from the Gorvani territories. "Chancellor Morvex, this is Defense Coordinator Thox. Human strike forces have penetrated our inner system. They're targeting civilian infrastructure, communication relays, trade stations, mining platforms." Then came the ethereal collective, their crystalline voices ringing with alarm. "Human vessels have bypassed our outer defenses entirely. They're using some form of stealth technology we've never encountered." Morvex's starlight form flickered as more reports flooded in. The Dominion, the Hegemony, the Trade Federation, system after system reporting sudden coordinated strikes by human forces that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "How is this possible?" he demanded as he rushed toward the emergency council chamber. "Our fleets outnumber theirs 15 to 1. General Krax was already waiting when Morvex arrived, his scarred carapace somehow looking even more battle-worn than usual. Around the chamber, holographic representatives of the 47 member species flickered with barely contained panic. "Report," Morvex ordered. Krax activated the tactical display, revealing a star map covered in red warning indicators. In the past 6 hours, human forces have struck 23 different systems across 17 species territories. They're not engaging our main fleets, they're hitting everything else. Elaborate supply depots, communication networks, trade routes, civilian infrastructure. Krax's voice carried a note of grudging admiration. They're not trying to defeat us militarily, they're trying to make the cost of this war unbearable. Ambassador Zephyr, still traumatized from her encounter with the human negotiator, spoke up from her position. The economic damage in just the first 6 hours is substantial. The Velkari have lost 3 major shipyards. The Gorvani trading hub at Kepler Station is completely destroyed. The ethereal communication network has been disrupted across 15 systems. Destroyed by how many ships? Morvex demanded. Krax consulted his data. Best estimates suggest the humans are using no more than 200 vessels for these operations. Small strike forces, highly mobile, coordinated across vast distances. 200 ships are crippling our infrastructure while our main fleets chase shadows? It's worse than that, said Counselor Thex, her insectoid features twitching with anxiety. Intelligence reports suggest these aren't even their main military vessels. These appear to be converted civilian ships, cargo haulers, mining vessels, exploration craft. The implication sent a chill through the chamber. If humans could accomplish this much damage with converted civilian ships, what could their actual military do? Where are their main fleets? Morvex asked. Unknown, Krax admitted. Our forces reached the outer human colonies 3 hours ago. Most were abandoned with only automated defenses. A few were defended by small garrison forces that fought to the last ship, but no sign of their primary military assets. They've vanished, added Admiral Vex of the Crystalline Fleet. 800 combat vessels, and we have no idea where they are. Find them, Morvex ordered, and stop these raids. Every hour this continues, the political pressure from member species increases. But even as he spoke, more alerts were flooding. And the humans weren't just hitting military and economic targets, they were doing something far more sophisticated. The next report came from the Centauran Trade Guild. High Chancellor. Guild leader Pex's normally composed demeanor was cracking. The humans have just broadcasted a message across our entire commercial network. They're offering protection to any non-council species willing to trade with humanity. What kind of protection? From council retaliation. They're promising to defend any species that breaks the trade embargo against human space. Pex paused. Chancellor, in the last hour, we've received inquiries from 43 different non-council species asking about the human offer. Morvex felt his starlight form dim with realization. The humans weren't just fighting a military war, they were fighting a political and economic one. Every successful raid, every display of their ability to strike anywhere, in council space, was a demonstration to non-council species that the mighty Galactic Council could be hurt. How many non-council species are there? He asked quietly. Approximately 800 known spacefaring civilizations, Counselor Quinn replied. Most are too small or remote to be considered for council membership, but if even a fraction of them decide that humanity offers a better deal than the council, Morvex didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. The chamber's communication system suddenly activated without authorization, displaying the image of a human female in military uniform. She was standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a starship, with the distinctive, blue-white glow of hyperspace visible through the viewports behind her. Greetings, High Chancellor Morvex and the distinguished members of the Galactic Council. It was Admiral Chen. How did she access our secured communication network? Krax growled. Chen smiled as if she could hear him. By now you've realized that this war isn't going to be the quick police action you expected. Your fleets are powerful, but they're designed to fight other fleets in traditional engagements. We're not giving you that courtesy, she gestured, and the view expanded to show the bridge around her. It was clearly a human warship, but the technology visible was unlike anything in the Council's intelligence files. You assumed that humanity was technologically primitive because we're new to space. What you didn't consider is that we've had 2 centuries to study your technology, your tactics, and your weaknesses. Every trade mission, every diplomatic contact, every friendly cultural exchange has been an intelligence-gathering operation. General Krax leaned forward, studying the ship's interior. That's not possible. Our security protocols are adequate for dealing with species that think like you do, Chen interrupted, again seeming to respond to comments she shouldn't be able to hear. But humans don't think like you do. We think like prey animals who became predators. We assume everything is a threat until proven otherwise. The display shifted to show tactical readouts that made the Council's military experts gasp. Human ships were indeed spread throughout the galaxy, but not randomly. They were positioned at the intersection points of major trade routes, near critical infrastructure nodes, within striking distance of every major Council world. You wanted to know where our main fleets are? Chen asked. They're everywhere. Every ship you're chasing is a main fleet. Every converted cargo hauler is a capital ship. Every human vessel is a potential weapon platform, because we built them that way from the beginning. Morvex found his voice. What do you want? What I've wanted from the beginning, Chancellor. Recognition of humanity's sovereignty. An end to demands for our submission. And a formal apology for threatening genocide against our species. And if we refuse? Chen's smile turned predatory. Then you'll learn what total war means to a species that evolved by killing everything else on their planet, including each other. You'll discover why humans are the only known species to have achieved spaceflight, while actively trying to make themselves extinct. The transmission cut out, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. General Krax was the first to speak. She's bluffing. They can't maintain this level of operations indefinitely. But even as he said it, reports continued flooding in. Human strikes were accelerating, not slowing down. More non-Council species were openly declaring their intention to trade with humanity. Several Council member species were beginning to question whether this war was worth the economic devastation it was causing. High Chancellor Morvex studied the tactical display, watching red alert indicators multiply across Council space. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained order through the simple principle that resistance was futile. Now, for the first time, they faced a species that seemed to view futile resistance as a reasonable life choice. General Krax, he said quietly, prepare the Omega Protocol. The chamber fell silent. The Omega Protocol was the Council's ultimate sanction, complete sterilization of an entire species' homeworld as an example to others. Chancellor, Councillor Vex said carefully, the Omega Protocol has never been used. The political ramifications of allowing humanity to continue this war are worse, Morvex replied. Every day this continues, more species see that the Council can be hurt. If we don't end this decisively, we risk the collapse of everything we've built. General Krax's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. I'll need 48 hours to position the Omega fleet around Earth's solar system. You have 36 hours, Morvex said. End this, General, whatever the cost. As the emergency session dissolved, none of them noticed the small data packet that had been uploaded to their communication network during Admiral Chen's transmission. Deep within the Council's information systems, human-designed code was already spreading, gathering intelligence, preparing for something that would make the first 3 days of the war look like a minor disagreement. Humanity had been preparing for this war for 2 centuries. They were just getting started. Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching Earth turn slowly below them. It was the first time she'd seen her homeworld in 3 years, and it might be the last time anyone would see it whole. The Omega fleet was coming. Ma'am, Commander Rodriguez approached with a datapad, his expression grim. Latest intelligence confirms it. 200 Council dreadnoughts, all equipped with planet-killer weapons. ETA 34 hours. Chen nodded, not taking her eyes off Earth's blue-white surface. How many people are still down there? 8.3 billion. The evacuation ships can take maybe 50 million before the fleet arrives. So we save 50 million and watch 8 billion die? The question came from Captain Morrison, who had joined them on the observation deck. Not necessarily, Chen replied. She turned to face them, and both officers were struck by the calm determination in her eyes. "Rodriguez, what's the status on Operation Prometheus?" "All systems are active and standing by." "But Admiral, even Prometheus can't stop 200 dreadnoughts from glassing the planet." "No," Chen agreed, "but it can do something else." She activated her personal communicator. "Bridge, this is Admiral Chen. Signal all fleet commanders for emergency conference. Priority Alpha clearance required." Within minutes, the secure communication chamber was filled with the holographic forms of humanity's military leadership. But this time, they were joined by figures that made even the seasoned officers stare. Dr. Sarah Kim from the Prometheus Research Division, Director Marcus Webb from Human Intelligence, and most surprisingly, President Martinez herself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, "the Council has escalated to the Omega Protocol. Earth will be under bombardment in 34 hours. The silence was profound. Admiral Zhang spoke first. "Our defensive platforms won't last 10 minutes against that kind of firepower." "No, they won't," Chen agreed. "Which is why we're not going to try to stop them." "Admiral?" Admiral Petrov looked confused. "Are you suggesting we abandon Earth?" President Martinez stepped forward. "What Admiral Chen is suggesting is that we let the Council make the biggest mistake in galactic history." Dr. Kim activated a holographic display showing Earth in 3 dimensions, but this wasn't the Earth anyone recognized. Networks of energy conduits ran throughout the planet's crust, connecting massive installations at key points around the globe. "For the past 50 years, Dr. Kim explained, the Prometheus project has been more than just weapon development. We've been preparing Earth itself as the ultimate strategic asset." Director Webb took over the presentation. "Every major city, every military installation, every critical piece of infrastructure on Earth is connected to a quantum communication network that extends throughout human space. When the Council attacks Earth, they won't just be destroying our homeworld. They'll be triggering a response that spans the entire galaxy." "Explain," Admiral Okafor demanded. Chen smiled grimly. "The Council thinks they understand human psychology. They believe that destroying Earth will break our will to fight, cause us to surrender unconditionally. They're about to learn that humans don't break. We explode." The display shifted to show human ships and installations throughout the galaxy, all connected by glowing lines of communication. "Every human ship, station, and colony is equipped with Prometheus technology," President Martinez explained. "When Earth falls, it will broadcast a final signal throughout the network. Not a surrender. Not a plea for mercy. A declaration of total war." "What kind of declaration?" Zhang asked, though something in his expression suggested he already suspected. "Doctor," Kim answered, "every human military asset in the galaxy will receive new orders. No longer are we fighting to defend our territory or protect our colonies. We'll be fighting for revenge. Complete, absolute, uncompromising revenge." "The gloves come off," Morrison said quietly. "The gloves come off," Chen confirmed. "The Council has spent 3,000 years believing that civilized species fight civilized wars with civilized rules. They're about to face humanity with nothing left to lose." Admiral Petrov was studying the display with growing understanding. "How much of our military strength have we been holding in reserve?" "Approximately 60%, Webb replied. "The raids of the past 3 days were conducted with our training squadrons and auxiliary forces. Our actual battle fleets haven't engaged yet." The implications were staggering. If humanity's amateur hour had crippled Council infrastructure across 23 systems, what could their professional military accomplish when unleashed with no restrictions? "There's more," President Martinez said. "Every non-Council species that has been watching this conflict will see the Council commit genocide against a species whose only crime was refusing to surrender their sovereignty. The political ramifications will be massive." Admiral Zhang leaned forward. "You're talking about turning Earth into a martyr." "We're talking about turning Earth into proof of what the Council really is," Chen corrected. "Not protectors of galactic peace, but a gang of bullies who resort to genocide when someone stands up to them." Dr. Kim manipulated the display to show projected outcomes. Our model suggests that watching the Council glass Earth will cause at least 200 non-Council species to align themselves with humanity. The economic disruption alone could collapse the Council within 5 years. At the cost of 8 billion human lives, Admiral Petrov pointed out. The weight of that statement settled over the conference like a shroud. 8 billion people. The entire birth world of their species reduced to radioactive ash to make a political point. President Martinez spoke into the silence. 3 days ago, we received a message from the underground resistance on Kepler 7th. It was from a group of civilians, teachers, engineers, farmers, who had been hiding in the ruins since the Council bombardment began. She activated a recording, and the voice that emerged was young, female, and absolutely unbroken despite the sound of explosions in the background. To whoever receives this is Rebecca Chen, age 16, Kepler colony survivor. The Council ships are coming back to finish what they started, and we probably won't make it to the shelters in time. But I want you to know we're not afraid, we're human, this is what we do. We fight, we survive, and when we can't survive, we make sure our deaths count for something. The recording paused, filled with the sound of approaching engines. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we went down swinging, and tell them to make these bastards pay for every single one of us. The transmission cut to static. President Martinez looked around the conference table at humanity's military leadership. Rebecca Chen was my niece. She was going to be a xenobiologist. She wanted to study alien life and help humans understand other species better. Her voice hardened. The Council murdered her and 10,000 others because Kepler colony refused. To lower the human flag, Chen stepped forward. Every person on Earth knows what's coming. We've been broadcasting the intelligence reports continuously. And do you know what the response has been? Not panic. Not calls to surrender. Volunteers for the Defense Forces have increased by 300% in the past 24 hours. They want to fight, Morrison said with something like awe. They want to fight, Chen confirmed. 8 billion people looking at certain death, and their response is to ask how many Council ships they can take with them. Admiral Zhang was quiet for a long moment. This is insane. We're gambling with the survival of our entire species. No, President Martinez replied. The Council is gambling with the survival of their civilization. They just don't know it yet. The conference continued for another hour, finalizing details of humanity's most desperate gambit. When it ended, the military commanders returned to their ships to prepare for what would either be humanity's darkest hour or the beginning of the Council's end. Chen remained on the observation deck, watching Earth turn below. In 30 hours, that beautiful blue world would be a burning cinder, but from its ashes would rise something the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity, with nothing left to lose. She thought about Ambassador Zephyr's final words from their negotiation. What makes you think 47 alien species can do what we couldn't do to ourselves? The answer was simple. Humans had spent 10,000 years trying to destroy each other and had only succeeded in making themselves stronger. The Council was about to learn what humanity looked like when it finally found an external enemy worthy of its full attention. As Chen watched, the first evacuation ships began rising from Earth's surface, carrying the lucky few who would survive, to see what came next. But the vast majority of humanity's birth world remained below, waiting for the hammer to fall. They weren't waiting in fear. They were waiting in anticipation. After all, humanity had always done its best work when everything was on the line. Epilogue. The New Galactic Order. 6 months later, High Chancellor Morveck stood in what remained of the Council chamber, staring at a tactical display that showed the complete collapse of galactic civilization as he had known it. The chamber itself was a shadow of its former grandeur. Half the member species had withdrawn from the Council, their seats empty. Their representatives fled to whatever safety they could find. Status report, he requested, though he dreaded the answer. Unreal. Krax, looking more battle-worn than ever, activated the holographic display.